Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching another world burn. The orange flame spread across the surface of Nexus Prime like a disease. He had seen this sight many times before. 300 years of conquest had made him very good at his job. "Another victory for the Empire," said Captain Korthek, walking up beside him. The younger officer still got excited about wins. Veltar remembered being like that once, long ago. "Yes," Veltar said, his voice flat. "Mark this system as conquered. Begin extraction of resources tomorrow." This was how it always went. First, his ships would arrive in orbit around a planet. Then they would send a message demanding surrender. Most species were smart enough to give up right away. Those who refused would face bombardment from space. After their cities burned and their armies scattered, they would finally surrender. The pattern never changed. Fear, resistance, defeat, surrender. It was as predictable as the stars in the sky. Veltar had conquered 47 different worlds. He had faced species that could breathe underwater, others that lived in frozen ice, and some that could fly without wings. None of them had lasted more than a few weeks against Catherian technology. His plasma cannons could melt through any armor. His energy shields could stop any weapon. His ships moved faster than anything else in the galaxy. "Sir," said Communications Officer Dextar from his station, "we have new orders from High Command." Veltar turned away from the burning planet. "What do they want now?" "Another conquest assignment. A small world in the outer rim. They call it Earth." Veltar walked to his command chair and sat down. He pulled up the mission files on his personal screen. The information made him almost laugh. This Earth was a joke compared to his last targets. The humans, as they called themselves, had only just learned to leave their own planet. Their fastest ships needed years to travel distances that Catherian vessels could cross in days. They fought each other constantly over tiny pieces of land and small disagreements. Their weapons were primitive chemical rockets and simple nuclear bombs. "Look at this," Veltar said to Korthek, pointing at his screen. "They still use metal projectiles as weapons. Metal, can you believe it?" Korthek studied the data. "They seem very divided, sir. The intelligence report shows they have nearly 200 separate governments. They cannot even work together to rule their own world." "Exactly. This will be easier than our last 5 conquests combined." Veltar stood up and addressed the bridge crew. "Change course for the Sol system. We have another primitive world to add to the Empire." The journey to Earth took 6 days. During that time, Veltar read more about the humans. They were young as species went, only recently developing space travel. They had fought countless wars among themselves but had never faced an enemy from the stars. Their technology was laughably behind. While Catherians had mastered energy weapons 3,000 years ago, humans still relied on crude gunpowder and metal bullets. Their ships needed huge amounts of fuel just to escape their planet's gravity. They communicated using radio waves that traveled at light speed, making real-time conversation across space impossible. "Sir, we are entering the Earth system," announced Navigator Kelvan. "Good. Begin standard approach. Send the surrender demand to all major population centers." This was always Veltar's favorite moment, the first contact between a primitive species and the mighty Catherian Empire. He could imagine the chaos on the planet below as they received his message. Leaders would panic. Military commanders would realize their weapons were useless. Scientists would understand how outmatched they were. "Message sent, sir," reported Dextar. "How long do you think they will take to surrender?" asked Korthek. Veltar considered this. Most species need a day to process the reality of their situation. The smart ones surrender immediately. The stubborn ones might take a week. But looking at these humans... He gestured at the tactical display showing Earth's weak orbital defenses. "I give them 3 days at most." The response came much faster than expected. Within 2 hours, every major human government had sent replies. Veltar expected immediate surrender. Instead, he found messages of defiance. "They refuse?" Korthek asked, reading over his shoulder. "All of them. Every single government." Veltar frowned. This is unusual. Even the most warlike species usually have some leaders who see reason. The human messages were strange. Instead of begging for mercy or trying to negotiate, they made threats. They promised to fight with everything they had. Some even seemed excited about the challenge. Perhaps they do not understand our power, suggested Korthek. Then we will show them. Veltar activated the fleet communications. All ships, begin bombardment of military targets. Show them what Catherian weapons can do. The attack began immediately. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit, striking human military bases around the globe. Missile launch sites vanished in bright flashes. Naval bases turned to slag. Airfields became craters. On the tactical display, Veltar watched red dots disappear as human defenses died under his assault. It was going exactly as planned. Soon the humans would see their helplessness and surrender. "Sir," said sensor operator Nextal, "we are receiving more messages from the planet." "Their surrender?" Veltar asked. "No, sir. More threats. They say the bombardment has only made them angry." Veltar stared at the display. This was not normal. Species that faced orbital bombardment usually became desperate to surrender. They begged for mercy and offered tribute. They did not make more threats. "Continue the attack," he ordered. "Target their major cities next. That will change their minds." But as the hours passed, something strange happened. Instead of breaking, the humans seemed to grow more determined. Their radio transmissions increased rather than decreased. Their remaining military units regrouped instead of scattering. Most puzzling of all, their communications showed no fear. Instead, they seemed to be getting organized. "Captain Korthek," Veltar said finally, "I want you to lead the ground assault. Take 2 full battalions and secure their largest city. These humans need to see Catherian soldiers up close before they will accept reality." "Yes, sir. Should I prepare for heavy resistance?" Veltar looked at the tactical display one more time. Human technology was primitive. Their military was in chaos from the bombardment. Their governments were scattered and confused. "No," he said. "This should be simple. These humans may be stubborn, but they are not stupid. Once they see our soldiers in person, they will surrender quickly." As Korthek's transport ships descended toward Earth, Veltar felt confident. He had done this dance many times before. Every species eventually learned the same lesson. Resistance was futile against the Catherian Empire. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that something was different about these humans. He pushed the thought away. War was nothing new to him. He had perfected the art of conquest long ago. Soon Earth would be just another trophy in his collection. 3 weeks later, Veltar stood in his war room staring at reports that made no sense. The conquest of Earth should have been finished by now. Instead, his forces were still fighting street by street through human cities. "Explain this to me." "Again," he said to Captain Korthek, who had returned from the surface covered in dust and looking tired. "The humans fight differently than any species we have faced before," Korthek said, activating a holographic display. "Look at this battle report from New Sol. We took the city center in 6 hours, just as planned. But then small groups of humans appeared from underground tunnels. They attacked our supply lines, destroyed our communications, and vanished before we could respond." Veltar studied the tactical display. Red dots showed Catherian positions, blue dots showed known human forces. But there were also gray areas marked as unknown enemy activity. "How many humans are we talking about?" Veltar asked. "That is the problem, sir. We cannot get an accurate count. They use civilian clothing and hide among the population. Yesterday, what we thought was a group of refugees turned out to be soldiers with hidden weapons. This was not how conquests worked. Defeated armies were supposed to retreat to fortified positions where they could be destroyed in organized battles. They were not supposed to disappear into the civilian population and launch surprise attacks." "What about their leadership structure?" Veltar asked. "Have we eliminated their command centers?" "We destroyed their major government buildings and military headquarters in the first bombardment," Korthek reported. "But somehow they are still coordinating their resistance. We intercept radio messages between groups, but they use simple codes that change every few hours. Veltar frowned. Simple codes? How can simple codes be effective? Because they reference things only humans would understand. Local landmarks, cultural references, shared memories. Our translation systems can convert the words but not the meaning behind them. On the display, new reports appeared from different battle zones. Veltar read them with growing confusion. In Tokyo, a group led by someone called Taiman had destroyed 3 Catherian hover tanks using nothing but explosive devices made from common chemicals. In London, a woman named Haun had organized civilian evacuation routes that somehow avoided all Catherian patrols. In New York, an engineer named Wu Jin had taken apart a captured Catherian energy rifle and was already building copies. Wait, Veltar said, pointing at the last report. They are copying our weapons? Yes, sir, and not just copying them. They are improving them. This Wu Jin person has made modifications that increase the power output by 15%. Impossible. Our weapons represent 3,000 years of technological development. No primitive species could improve them in a matter of days. Korthek pulled up another file. I thought the same thing, sir. But look at this intelligence report. The humans have something they call reverse engineering. They take apart our technology, figure out how it works, and then make their own versions. Veltar read the report twice. Human scientists had not just copied Catherian plasma weapons. They had created portable versions that were lighter and more efficient than the originals. They had taken Catherian energy shield generators and built smaller ones that individual soldiers could carry. How are they manufacturing these weapons? Veltar demanded. That is another problem, sir. We destroyed their major factories in the bombardment, but they have created new ones in unexpected places. Underground bunkers, abandoned buildings, even vehicles that move from place to place. A woman named So Young has turned an old subway tunnel into a weapons factory. The tactical display updated again, showing new enemy activity across the planet. Instead of the human resistance getting weaker over time, it seemed to be getting stronger, more organized, better equipped. Sir, said Intelligence Officer Texmar, entering the war room, I have the casualty reports you requested. Veltar took the datapad, expecting to see the usual numbers. In most conquests, enemy casualties far exceeded Catherian losses. Sometimes by ratios of 100 to 1 or more. The numbers on the Seyur pad made him read it 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. We have lost more soldiers than they have, he asked. Yes, sir. The humans use tactics we have never encountered. They sacrifice small groups to destroy much larger Catherian units. Yesterday, a single human named Dongsu destroyed an entire supply convoy by crashing his aircraft into it. Why would he do that? He could have been captured and lived. According to intercepted communications, he volunteered for the mission. Other humans call these suicide attacks, but they do not seem to view them as suicide. They call them necessary sacrifices for the greater good. Veltar sat down heavily in his command chair. In 300 years of conquest, he had never faced enemies who willingly died to inflict damage on his forces. Most species fought to live. These humans seemed to fight for something more important than their individual survival. Show me the communication intercepts, he ordered. Texmar activated the audio system. Veltar listened to recorded human radio, transmissions translated into Catherian language. The conversations were unlike anything he had heard from other conquered species. This is Jinne calling all resistance cells. The enemy has taken the university, but we have evacuated all research data. Continue with Plan 7. Resistance cell led by Kyung-ho here. We have 37 civilians safe in shelter complex. B requesting supply drop for wounded. This is Sobin. Enemy forces retreating from Sector 12, moving to support Hyunsu's group in Sector 9. The humans talked about their war as if they expected to win, not just survive until rescue came, but actually defeat the Catherian Empire. They shared resources, coordinated attacks, and seemed to care more about protecting civilians than military objectives. Sir, Korthek said quietly, there is something else. The humans have been sending messages to other systems in the galaxy. What kind of messages? They are trying to contact species we have already conquered. They want to form some kind of alliance. Veltar laughed, but it sounded hollow even to him. An alliance? What could they possibly offer other conquered worlds? Hope, sir. They are telling them that the Kytherian Empire can be defeated. They are sharing their weapon designs and tactical information. The laughter died in Veltar's throat. This was definitely not how conquests were supposed to work. Defeated species were supposed to accept their fate and join the Empire. They were not supposed to inspire rebellion in other systems. How many responses have they received, he asked. Unknown, sir. But our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in 3 previously conquered systems. Ship movements, communication increases, signs that local populations are becoming restless. Veltar stood up and walked to the main view screen showing Earth. The blue planet looked peaceful from space. But he knew that every continent was now a battlefield. His supposedly quick conquest had turned into the longest military campaign in recent Kytherian history. Double our ground forces, he ordered. Bring in the 7th and 12th fleets from the Vega system. Sir, Korthek said carefully, that will leave the Vega system with minimal defense. The Vega system is already conquered. It does not need defense. Veltar turned back to his officers. This Earth situation will be resolved quickly with more firepower. These humans may be stubborn, but they are still primitive. We will crush their resistance with overwhelming force. But even as he gave the orders, Veltar felt something he had not experienced in centuries of warfare. For the first time in his military career, he was not certain of victory. The humans had turned what should have been a simple conquest into something completely different. They had made war unpredictable again, and that worried him more than he wanted to admit. 6 months into what should have been a 1-week conquest, Veltar received news that shook him to his core. The humans had built spaceships. Show me the sensor readings again, he demanded, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. Confirmed, sir, reported Sensor Officer Nextal. 12 vessels of unknown design launching from the dark side of their moon. They appear to be using modified Kytherian propulsion systems. Veltar watched the red dots representing human ships move across his display. This was impossible. 6 months ago, these humans could barely leave their planet's atmosphere. Now they had somehow built a fleet capable of faster-than-light travel. How did they get Kytherian propulsion technology? He asked. Captain Korthek pulled up a battle report. Remember the supply convoy that was destroyed last month? Intelligence now believes the humans salvaged more than we realized. A team led by someone named Yuna appears to have recovered intact engine components. And they reverse-engineered faster-than-light travel in a few weeks? Veltar's voice rose with frustration. It took our scientists centuries to perfect that technology. The humans seem to approach engineering differently than we do, sir. Instead of following established procedures, they experiment with radical modifications. This Yuna person has created engine designs that our own scientists call theoretically impossible. On the display, the human ships were accelerating toward Veltar's fleet at speeds that defied their crude construction. Intelligence reports showed they were cobbled together from salvaged alien technology, human industrial equipment, and materials that should not work in space. Sir, announced Communications Officer Dextar, we are receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel. Put it on screen. The view screen flickered, then showed the bridge of a human ship. Veltar found himself looking at a middle-aged human male in a simple uniform. The man's nameplate read Commander Dong Hyun, Kytherian vessel. The human said in accented but clear Kytherian language, "This is Commander Dong Hyun of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have one opportunity to withdraw from our system peacefully." Veltar stepped forward. "I am Commander Veltar of the Kytherian Empire. Your ships are primitive constructs that pose no threat to my fleet. Surrender now, and you will be treated with mercy." The human smiled, but there was no humor in it. 6 months ago, you offered us the same mercy. We have seen what Kytherian mercy looks like. Our cities burned. Our people died. We choose to fight. Your ships cannot match our firepower or defenses, Veltar said. This is suicide. Maybe, Dong-hyun replied. But we learned something important during your occupation of our world. We learned that survival is not the most important thing. Freedom is worth any price. The transmission ended. Veltar stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his tactical officer. Analysis of enemy fleet capabilities. Their ships appear to be using hybrid technology, sir. Catherian engines and weapons combined with human modifications. Estimated firepower is 60% of a comparable Catherian vessel. However, they have some advantages. What advantages could they possibly have? They are faster and more maneuverable than our ships. The human modifications have reduced mass while maintaining structural integrity. Also, sir, they appear to be piloted by individuals with extensive atmospheric combat experience. Veltar frowned. Atmospheric combat experience? How is that relevant? To space battle? Humans have been fighting three-dimensional aerial combat for over a century, sir. They think differently about movement in space. Our pilots are trained for the more predictable patterns of standard fleet engagement. The human ships were now close enough for visual contact. Veltar studied them through his ship's cameras. They looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Catherian hull sections had been welded to human spacecraft frames. Weapon ports had been cut into civilian passenger vessels. One ship appeared to be built around the engines of 3 different Catherian fighters. They should not be able to fly, he muttered. But they do, sir, and according to our sensors, they fly very well. The battle began without formal declaration. The human ships suddenly spread out in a complex 3-dimensional pattern, moving in ways that Catherian tactical computers had never been programmed to predict. Instead of the standard approach formations that all civilized species used, they came from multiple directions at once. Veltar's plasma cannons fired, but the human ships were no longer where his targeting systems expected them to be. They rolled, dove, and climbed through space like atmospheric fighters, using maneuvers that should not work in zero gravity. How are they generating that much thrust? Demanded Veltar, as a human ship performed an impossible 90-degree turn. Unknown, sir. Their engine modifications are beyond our current understanding. One human ship, smaller and faster than the others, broke through the Catherian formation and headed straight for Veltar's flagship. Its pilot was performing maneuvers that should have killed any organic being from the acceleration forces. Target. That ship, Veltar ordered. Multiple Catherian vessels opened fire, but the human pilot seemed to anticipate every shot. The ship weaved between plasma beams like it was dancing. Its pilot's name appeared on Veltar's intelligence display. Tae-woo. Sir, the enemy ship is requesting permission to dock, announced Dextar. What? The pilot is demanding single combat, between commanders. He says it is a human tradition. Veltar almost laughed. Single combat? This is not some primitive ritual. This is modern warfare. But even as he spoke, the human ship was attaching itself to his flagship's docking bay. Somehow, Tae-woo had managed to board Veltar's vessel in the middle of a space battle. Sir, we have intruders in Section 7, reported Security Chief Voxlan. A small human strike team. They are fighting their way toward the bridge. Veltar grabbed his personal weapon and headed for the bridge doors. How many? 5, sir. But they are. Sir, they fight like they have nothing to lose. Veltar reached the main corridor just as the human team arrived. He found himself face to face with 5 humans in improvised armor, carrying a mix of Catherian and human weapons. The leader, a young woman, stepped forward. I am G1, she said in Catherian. We are here to capture your ship. Veltar looked at her with disbelief. She was wounded, bleeding from multiple cuts. Her armor was damaged and her squad was clearly exhausted. They had fought through hundreds of meters of defended corridor to reach this point. You are 5 soldiers against a ship crew of 3,000, he said. This is madness. Maybe, G1 replied. But we promised our families we would end this war. We keep our promises. She raised her weapon, and Veltar realized something that shocked him. She was not afraid. After months of fighting, after watching her world burn, after facing impossible odds, this human was still not afraid. The firefight was brief but intense. Kitherian security forces poured into the corridor, but the humans fought with a desperate efficiency that Veltar had never seen. They used the ship's own structure against its defenders, turning corners into kill zones and using maintenance passages to attack from unexpected angles. When the shooting stopped, 3 of the humans were dead, but so were dozens of Kitherian soldiers. G1 and 1 companion had barricaded themselves in a critical system junction, where they could threaten the ship's power core. "Surrender," Veltar called to them. "You have fought bravely, but you cannot win." "We already won," G1 called. "Bagamrian, look at your tactical display." Veltar checked his ship's status. While the human strike team had been fighting through his corridors, the human fleet had been systematically destroying his supporting vessels. 3 Kitherian ships were gone. 2 more were badly damaged. "How?" he whispered. "You fight like you have something to lose," G1 said. "We fight like we have everything to protect. That makes all the difference." For the first time in 300 years of conquest, Veltar gave the order to retreat. As his remaining ships fled toward the edge of the solar system, he stared back at Earth with new understanding. These humans were not just defending their world. They were fighting a war that would change everything. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. Veltar spent weeks in the outer system, trying to understand what had gone wrong. His fleet had regrouped around a small asteroid, far from Earth's defensive range, while he studied every piece of data his forces had gathered about the humans. The more he learned, the more disturbed he became. "Show me the communication intercepts again," he told Intelligence Officer Texmar. "The ones from after our retreat." The holographic display activated, showing translated human radio transmissions from the days following the space battle. Veltar expected to hear celebration, boasting about their victory or at least relief that they had survived. Instead, he heard something much more dangerous. "This is Sol calling all resistance networks," came the voice of someone identified as Seok Jin. "The enemy fleet has withdrawn, but this is not over. We must use this time to prepare for their return and to help others fight for their freedom." "Moscow," responding, said another voice. "We have completed reverse engineering of captured Kitherian communication equipment, ready to begin long-range contact with other conquered worlds. London here. Our shipyards are now producing improved designs. We will have 50 vessels ready within 2 months. How many can other cities contribute?" Veltar paused the playback. "They are building more ships?" "Yes, sir. Intelligence estimates they will have a fleet of over 200 vessels within 6 months. But that is not the most concerning development." "What do you mean?" Texmar pulled up another file. "They are not just building ships for defense, sir. They are planning offensive operations against Kitherian positions throughout the galaxy." The display showed a map of known space. Red dots marked Kitherian-controlled systems. Blue lines showed projected human expansion routes. The pattern made Veltar's blood run cold. "They intend to liberate every world we have ever conquered," he said. "It appears so, sir. But more importantly, they are succeeding in making contact with populations in those systems." A new audio file played. This time, it was not human voices, but other alien species, former enemies that Veltar had personally defeated years or decades ago. "This is the Andromedan Resistance Network," came a translated voice. "We have received your technical specifications for improved weapons. Our people are ready to fight again." "Centauri Prime calling Terra," said another. "Your message of hope has reached us. We thought we were alone, but now we see that others share our dream of freedom." "The Vegan colonies stand with Earth," declared a third voice. "Send us your ship designs. We will build our own fleet." Veltar turned off the display and walked to the observation deck of his flagship. Through the transparent metal, he could see Earth in the distance, a small blue dot that had somehow become the most dangerous threat the Kitherian Empire had ever faced. "Sir," said Captain Korthek, joining him at the window. "I have the analysis you requested of human tactical patterns. What did you find?" "Their approach to warfare is unlike anything in our military databases, sir. Most species fight to minimize their own losses while inflicting maximum damage on the enemy. Humans seem to fight for different goals entirely." Korthek activated a portable display showing various battle recordings. Look at this engagement in what they call the Battle of Mumbai. A human commander named Inho was surrounded by our forces, with no chance of escape. Instead of surrendering, he ordered his entire unit to attack our heaviest fortifications. Suicide, Veltar said. That is what our tactical computers predicted, sir. But Inho was not trying to survive. He was trying to create a gap in our defenses so that civilian evacuation ships could escape. His entire unit died, but 12,000 human civilians lived. The display switched to another recording. Here is the defense of Cairo. Commander, Yunji had a choice between protecting her military headquarters or defending a hospital. She chose the hospital, even though it meant losing her command center and most of her heavy weapons. Illogical, Veltar muttered. Yes, sir, but effective. By saving the hospital, she preserved human medical knowledge and doctors who later treated wounded from both sides. This actually increased overall human resistance capabilities by reducing casualties in later battles. Veltar studied the tactical analyses, trying to understand the pattern. Human decisions often seem to make no military sense, but somehow they achieved strategic advantages that more logical choices would not have. They weaponized their compassion, he said finally. Sir, every time they choose to save civilians, over military objectives they inspire more people to join their cause. Every time they treat our wounded soldiers with respect, they create doubt in our ranks. Every time they sacrifice themselves for others, they prove that their cause is worth dying for. Korthek nodded slowly. Our psychological warfare specialists have noted unusual patterns in human behavior under stress. Most species become less organized and more selfish when facing extinction. Humans become more organized and more cooperative. A new message alert interrupted their conversation. Texmar hurried onto the observation deck. Sir, priority communication from High Command. Veltar accepted the transmission. The hologram of Fleet Admiral Zixthak appeared, looking more concerned than Veltar had ever seen him. Commander Veltar, report your status immediately. We have regrouped and are analyzing enemy capabilities, Admiral. I recommend immediate reinforcement with at least 50 additional vessels before attempting to retake the Earth system. 50 vessels? The Admiral's expression darkened. Do you understand what you are asking for? That represents nearly a quarter of our total fleet. Strength, yes, sir. But these humans are not like other species we have conquered. They fight with... I do not care how they fight, Zixthak interrupted. What I care about is the reports I am receiving from across the Empire. 3 conquered systems have declared independence in the past month. Rebellion is spreading to worlds that have been peaceful for decades, and they all claim inspiration from these humans you have failed to defeat. Veltar felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Which systems, sir? Vega, Altair, and Proxima Centauri. All of them are building fleets based on designs that these humans somehow transmitted across interstellar space. They claim they are fighting for freedom and self-determination, concepts that had been eliminated from their cultures generations ago. The Admiral leaned forward in his hologram. Commander Veltar, you have 30 days to resolve the Earth situation permanently. Use whatever force is necessary. Destroy the entire planet if you must, but end this before it spreads further. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar alone with his thoughts. Through the observation window, Earth continued its slow rotation, looking peaceful and harmless. But he now understood that this small world had accomplished something no other enemy had ever managed. The humans had not just defended themselves, they had given hope to an entire galaxy of oppressed peoples. Sir, Korthek asked quietly. Your orders. Veltar continued staring at Earth. In 30 days, he would have to make a decision that would determine the fate of both species. He could follow orders and destroy the human world, ending their rebellion but also eliminating their unique contribution to galactic civilization. Or he could try to understand why these humans fought so fiercely for concepts that seemed to matter more to them than life itself. Begin deep intelligence gathering, he said finally. I want to know everything about human culture, history, and motivation. If I am going to defeat them, I need to understand what makes them so different from every other species in the galaxy. As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, Veltar remained at the window, watching Earth and wondering if he was looking at the birth of something that would change the galaxy forever. The final confrontation did not come as Veltar had expected. Instead of his forces attacking Earth, a massive fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system, arriving not to save the human world, but to end Catherian dominance forever. "Sir, we have multiple contacts," reported Sensor Officer Nextal, his voice tight with disbelief. "Over 300 vessels of various designs." Veltar stared at the tactical display in shock. The approaching fleet was unlike anything he had ever seen. Human ships flew alongside vessels from dozens of other species, all worlds that the Catherian Empire had conquered over the centuries. "Identify fleet composition," he ordered. 47 human vessels, 63 Andromedan ships, 58 vegan cruisers, 34 Centauri fighters, and vessels from at least 15 other conquered systems, sir. They are flying under a unified command structure. This was impossible. Conquered worlds did not cooperate with each other. They barely maintained their own planetary governments under Catherian oversight. Yet somehow, the humans had created an alliance that spanned half the galaxy. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," announced Communications Officer Dextar. "Put it through." The main screen showed the bridge of a human vessel, but this was larger and more advanced than the crude ships Veltar had faced before. At its center stood a middle-aged human woman wearing a uniform that combined elements from multiple species' military traditions. "I am Admiral Subin of the Terran Alliance," she said in perfect Catherian. "I am here to offer the Catherian Empire one opportunity for peaceful surrender." Veltar stepped forward. "I am Commander Veltar. You command an impressive force, Admiral, but you are still outnumbered. My reinforcements will arrive within—" "Your reinforcements are not coming," Subin interrupted calmly. "The Catherian fleets from the Rigel and Alpha Centauri sectors have been engaged by Allied forces. The fleet from Vega has joined our alliance after their crews voted to defect rather than fight for an empire that enslaves worlds." The tactical display updated, confirming her words. Red icons representing Catherian reinforcements had either disappeared or changed to blue alliance markers. Veltar's numerical advantage was evaporating by the hour. "How?" he asked. "The same way we freed every other system in our alliance," Subin replied. "We asked people what they wanted. We offered them a choice between freedom and slavery. Most chose freedom." On the display behind her, Veltar could see the bridge crew of her flagship. Humans worked alongside aliens from a dozen different worlds. A Vegan engineer consulted with a human technician. An Andromedan communications officer translated between 3 different languages. They moved together with the easy cooperation of people who had chosen to fight for a common cause. "Your empire is based on fear," Subin continued. "Fear that resistance is hopeless. Fear that cooperation between different species is impossible. Fear that freedom is not worth the price of fighting for it. We have proven that all of those fears are lies." "You have proven nothing," Veltar said, though he could hear the lack of conviction in his own voice. "You have assembled a temporary alliance that will collapse the moment you face real opposition. Then let us test that theory." The battle that followed was unlike any engagement in Veltar's long military career. The Alliance fleet did not attack in the organized formations that Catherian tactical doctrine expected. Instead, they fought as individuals united by common purpose. Human ships used their superior maneuverability to confuse Catherian targeting systems, while Andromedan vessels provided heavy firepower. Vegan cruisers with their advanced shields protected smaller craft during attack runs. Centauri fighters, known for their speed, struck at Catherian weak points and vanished before return fire could reach them. But what truly shocked Veltar was not their tactics, but their coordination. These ships and crews from different worlds, different cultures and different military traditions worked together as if they had trained together for years. "How are they managing such precise coordination?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. They appear to be using hybrid communication protocols that combine the best features of multiple species systems. And sir, their decision-making seems to be distributed among multiple commanders rather than following a single hierarchy. That should create chaos and confusion." "It should, sir. but instead it seems to make them more flexible and harder to predict. A human strike force, led by someone identified as Commander Hyun-soo, broke through Veltar's defensive line, using a maneuver that violated every principle of space combat doctrine. They flew directly toward the largest concentration of Catherian firepower, taking devastating losses, but creating an opening for Alliance heavy cruisers to attack Veltar's flagship. "Sir, enemy boarding parties have attached to Sections 4 and 7, reported Security Chief Voxlan. This time, Veltar was ready. He had studied human boarding tactics for weeks and prepared countermeasures. His security forces had practiced anti-human combat techniques. They knew to expect the unexpected. It did not matter. The Alliance boarding teams included not just humans but soldiers from multiple species working together. When Catherian defenses adapted to human tactics, Andromedan soldiers used different approaches. When energy weapons proved ineffective against Vegan personal shields, human fighters switched to projectile weapons that could penetrate them. "They are learning and adapting faster than we can respond," Voxlan reported over the sound of weapon fire in the corridors. "Every time we counter one tactic, they try something new." Veltar found himself fighting in his own command center. As Alliance soldiers reached the bridge, the battle was brief and decisive. When the shooting stopped, half his bridge crew was dead or wounded and he was surrounded by enemies. But these enemies were not celebrating their victory. Instead, they were already treating Catherian wounded and working to prevent further casualties. "Why?" Veltar asked the human commander who had led the assault. "Why what?" asked the young man whose nameplate identified him as Jae-hyun. "Why are you helping my wounded soldiers? We are your enemies." Jae-hyun looked at him with surprise. "They are people, just like us. The war is over for them now. They deserve medical care and respect." Through the bridge viewports, Veltar could see that the space battle was ending. Catherian ships were surrendering rather than fighting to destruction. Their crews were being taken aboard Alliance vessels not as prisoners but as refugees. "Sir," said Admiral Subin, entering the bridge with a medical team. "Are you wounded?" Veltar stared at her. "You are offering me medical care?" "Of course. You are no longer a military threat, so you are no longer an enemy." She gestured to the medical team. "These are doctors from 6 different worlds. They took an oath to heal anyone who needs healing, regardless of species or politics." As alien medics worked to treat his injured officers, Veltar finally understood what made the humans and their allies so dangerous to the Catherian Empire. They did not just fight with superior tactics or technology. They fought with an idea that was more powerful than any weapon. "You really believe that all people deserve freedom," he said to Subin. "Not just believe it," she replied. "We have proven it. Every world in our alliance chose to join voluntarily. Every species that fights with us does so because they want to, not because they have to." Over the following days, as Alliance forces secured Catherian territory throughout the galaxy, Veltar watched an empire collapse not through military defeat, but through the simple act of giving people a choice. World after world voted to join the Alliance rather than remain under Catherian control. Even Catherian colonies began declaring independence, their populations inspired by the example of species that had successfully thrown off imperial rule. "What will happen to us now?" Veltar asked Subin during one of their conversations. "That depends on you," she said. "The Alliance does not believe in revenge or collective punishment. Individuals who committed war crimes will face trial, but ordinary soldiers and civilians will be free to build new lives in free societies. And if we choose to return to the old ways, then you will find that most of the galaxy no longer fears the Catherian Empire. Freedom is contagious, Commander. Once people have experienced it, they do not willingly give it up." Months later, as Veltar sat in a comfortable detention facility on Earth, he reflected on the lesson he had learned too late. War had indeed been nothing new to him for 3 centuries. He had mastered every aspect of conquest and domination. But he had never understood the power of an idea worth dying for. The humans had not just defeated his fleets and destroyed his empire. They had proven that freedom was more powerful than fear, that cooperation was stronger than coercion, and that hope could overcome even the most impossible odds. The wrath of humanity had not been their anger but their absolute refusal to accept that any people should live in slavery, and that refusal had inspired a galaxy to stand up and fight for something better. Looking out his window at the blue sky of Earth, Veltar finally understood why war would never be the same again. The humans had changed the rules forever. They had shown that some things truly were worth any sacrifice to protect. And throughout the galaxy, millions of beings on thousands of worlds would never forget that lesson.